said it's cold outside and she hands me a raincoat. She's always worried about things like that. She said it's all gonna end and it might as well be my fault. She only sleeps when it's raining, and she screams and her voice is strained, and she says, baby, it's 3 a.m., I must be lonely. And she says, baby, well, I can't help be scared of it all. Sometimes that the rain's gonna wash away, I believe in. I always forget the next lyrics. She's got a little bit of something, God is better than nothing. And in a color portrait world, she believes that she's got it all. She swears the moon don't hang quite as high as it used to. Only sleeps when it's raining, and she screams and her voice is strained, and she says, baby, it's 3 a.m., I must be lonely. And she says, baby, well, I can't help but be scared of it all. Sometimes that the rain's gonna wash away, I believe. Rain's gonna wash away, I believe in. She believes that life isn't made up of all that you used to. Clock on the wall has been stuck at 3 for days. She thinks that happiness is a mat that sits on a doorway. But outside it stopped raining. Yeah, and she says, baby, it's 3 a.m., I must be lonely. She says, baby, well, I can't help be scared of it all. Well, I can't help be scared of it all. Sometimes that the rain's gonna wash away, I believe in. The only annoying thing about that song is that you're always hearing this. And that note starts to grate on me after a while. I have to figure out a way to... Yeah, I should play it like that. Without the add 9. Add 9? Hey, what's up, Ninja? Greetings, Leorix. Awaken, awaken. Yas. Oof. Them fingers, though. Not a euphemism. She believes that life isn't made up of all that you used to. I'm not familiar with Metalocalypse. Oh, is that the stream that's happening right now? Hi, Emma Hardcastle. Yeah, that's this stream right now. I didn't have my Facebook comments up. I'm so sorry. All right, I'm watching my comments now on Facebook as. That's right now. I didn't have my. Greetings to the UK. Writing is going well, or it's, you know, it's presumably gonna be in a second. And the clock on the wall has been stuck at 3 for days and days. Thank you. Thank you for forgiving me, Emma. I appreciate that. All right, we're doing our final proofread of Bloodlust. Why'd I get into my radio voice? All right, coming at you this afternoon doing our final proofread of Bloodlust by Garrett Robinson. Read also by Garrett Robinson. Should I have a pseudonym when I narrate my own audiobooks? I was thinking about giving myself a pseudonym. Narrated by Scott King. That's my go-to pseudonym. Because when I was a kid, I always insisted that everyone call me Scotty Garrett Banter Robinson Vargas Hill Shoulder King, which was an amalgamation of a bunch of different names from people in my life. And so when I grew older and I needed a pseudonym, I would always just default to Scott King. Scotty Garrett Banter Robinson Vargas Hill Shoulder King. Scott King. Yeah. What's up, Dread? That would be amazing, Emma. That would be fantastic. I've been wanting to do more podcast talks. Chapter 26. Start that timer. As we ambled away from the shade hideout, Kaida watched us go, rage and grief burning in her heart. She wanted to swoop. And just in case anyone's confused, I will not be narrating the audiobooks this way. I'm doing a proofread, so I'm reading it out loud, but I'm not performing. I'm not performing. Sounds so fucking pretentious. She wanted to swoop down on us. She wanted to claw our eyes out in her raven form, and then she wanted to take her cat form and rip us limb from limb, feasting on our steaming flesh. No, that would be too quick. She would drag us off into the wilderness and play knives across our skin, and then leave us bleeding in the night to be a vampire's feast. None of the shades were supposed to die. Delic, especially, was not supposed to die. It was only supposed to be Pontu. Instead, he alone had survived. What an evil joke of the darkness below. She had thought of intervening when she saw us enter the house, but she still feared the cold fury in Mag's eye and the brilliant flash of her spear. And in the end she had hesitated too long. She had seen us emerge from the house, blood-stained but still alive, and she knew that all the shades inside had been murdered. Now she would have to find another way to lure us along the trail, but first she would kill the boy. With his own blood he would atone for the far, far more valuable lives that had already been lost. She watched the constables emerge from the house, Pontu in tow. Sin she still had him by the scruff of the neck, dragging him like a wayward pup. Yue seized his shirt and pulled him away from her constable, shoving a finger in his face to give him a final admonishment. When she had finished with him, she shoved him away, and Pontu went scuttling down the street. That coffee, though. Kaita took wing, flapping to catch up with Pontu and watch him from above. He ducked around the first corner he could, then poked an eye around it to watch Yue and the other constables. They stood in conference for a moment before Yue bade them all leave. From so high in the air, Kaita could not hear what she said to them, and she did not care. The constables vanished into the streets of the town. And then, to her great surprise, Pontu snuck from cover and made his way back towards the shade hideout. Kaita swooped lower, watching him, her mind whirling. What was the boy doing? Did he have something stashed away in the hideout, or did he have no other home in Lanshui to which he could return? Suddenly she regretted not having learned more about the boy from Delic. He had seemed so insignificant. She watched as Pontu opened the hideout's front door. He paused there for a moment, recoiling with a hand over his mouth. If she had had lips, Kaita would have sneered. Weak and a fool. But after a moment he mastered himself. He slipped inside the door, shutting it behind him. Kaita felt a thrill race through her. She had him now. With a flap of her ebony wings, she landed in the alley beside the hideout. Her eyes glowed, and in a moment she had resumed her human form. "Hello, human." Complete with the form-fitting clothes she was able to bring with her during transformations. After listening and watching to make sure there were no witnesses, she crept to the front door of the hideout and slipped inside. The house was utterly silent. She felt the pulse of the evil magic within, seeping up through the floor from the chamber below, where the shades had performed their rituals. It pulsed through her body, far more powerful thanks to her magic. She breathed deeply, relishing the feeling of the power. For a moment she considered. Should she seize the strength of the cauldron? Could she even do so? No one knew what it would do to a wizard. Best not to risk it. Not yet. Silent as a cat, she crept from room to room, ready to reach for her magic in an instant. But the house seemed empty. Frowning, Kaita sped to the stairs leading up. She climbed them, impatience making her incautious. Her footfalls were now audible. But if the boy was upstairs... Humans. That's right. But if the boy was upstairs, he would not be able to escape her anyway, even if he did hear her. He was not upstairs. She searched every room, even under the beds, as though this were a child's game of catch the imp. After searching under the last bed, Kaita straightened. She looked towards the stairs leading down, her eyes narrowing. There seemed no possibility the boy knew of the basement. Delic would never have permitted him to learn of it, yet it was the only place left. She returned downstairs and opened the secret door. Ignoring the torch, she leaped down the stairs 2 at a time, reaching the underground chamber in but a moment. There she paused for a long moment. Double moment. Oh, I already fixed that one. Ha! Yeah, one of the proofreaders must have caught that. Letting her eyes adjust to the thin shafts of light that came through the floorboards above. The chamber was empty. Kaita gave a low, outraged cry. He had heard her. She did not know how, but he must have, and he slipped out of the house when she was searching for him. Or mayhap he had climbed out a window. Either way, he was not here. She tried to calm herself with long, slow, shaking breaths. The boy did not matter. He was insignificant, less than nothing. Revenge would have been sweet, but it was nothing compared to her mission. She would let it go. Mag and I were all that mattered in the end. Whirling, she climbed the stairs and left the house. Pontu waited a very, very long time, likely longer than he needed to, until he was sure she was gone. When her footsteps had long since faded away and the creak of the house's front door was a near memory, he emerged. He pushed open the door of the cabinet and uncurled himself from the cramped space within. He stood now in the underground chamber. The massive cauldron sat before him, and sunlight glinted through the floorboards high above. Still shaking with fear and drenched with sweat, he nevertheless looked behind him at the cabinet with a little smile. He might not be a fast runner, and certainly he was no fighter, and as he had learned just that morning, he was awful at trailing a mark without being spotted. But hiding? Yes, Pontu was very good at hiding. It was, mayhap, the only thing he was good at. Certainly his father would have said it was the only thing he was good for, Darktake the man. Pontu still did not know how the day had gone so wrong, but now the shades were dead, and the only one left, Kaita, seemed to be hunting him. I wonder, these many years later, if he thought of going into town and finding Mag and me and telling us what had transpired. We would have helped him, of course, the poor fool, but whether he wanted to or not, he did not do it. Instead, he went to one of the other cabinets, one of the high... I should probably do... a paragraph break here. Just because of the perspective change. I wonder these many years later if he thought of going into town and finding Mag and me and telling us what had transpired. We would have helped him, of course, the poor fool, but whether he wanted to or not, he did not do it. Instead, he went to one of the other cabinets, one of the high, locked ones on the other side of the room. From a nook in the wall, he pulled a key. The Shades had not known that Pontu knew about the key. Indeed, they did not know he knew about this chamber. Pontu was a poor one for stealth, but he was an expert at being ignored. He had discovered long ago that he could go almost anywhere so long as he did not try to hide it, and everyone around him would simply ignore his presence. In truth, it was what he had tried that morning with Mag and me. Only Mag's heightened sense of danger had discovered him and led to all the rest of the day's madness. And so, lurking in the background and keeping to the shadows, Pontu had learned much of the Shades' doings. He had seen the ritual they performed with the cauldron of black liquid, and he thought he knew what they were doing. The key turned easily in the cabinet's lock. He opened it to reveal a small pile of black, almost translucent crystals. These were mage stones. Simply owning them was one of the highest crimes listed by the king's law. Using them was even worse. Hey, what's up, Wordwin? Eaten by a wizard, they granted a terrible power, but, too, they ate away at the mind, creating a hunger that overpowered all reason. Mage stones had given Zane the power to save my life in the Great Rocks. Mage stones had driven him mad to the point that he almost killed me. But Pontu knew none of this. He knew only that the Shades burned the mage stones in a fire under the cauldron, and he thought he knew why. The Shades had been secretive about their motives, of course, but Pontu had made several guesses, helped by the papers the Shades left strewn about their shelves and desks. Pontu had never learned to read, but the papers also bore many sketches of vampires. A vampire plagued Lan Shui. The Shades were performing a ritual that had something to do with it. It stood to reason in his mind that they were trying to drive it off, using some magic that was beyond the king's law. 2 collections of short stories finished. Well done, Dread! Hot damn. Therefore, Pontu now drew 5 mage stones from the cabinet. The Shades had only ever used 2 at a time, adding to the fire once every 2 days. But Pontu was tired of that. He was tired of hearing about attack after attack, townsfolk and those beyond the walls slaughtered in the night, entire families devoured by a beast that no one had lived to speak of. 5 stones would drive it away for certain. Taking the stones in his hand, he crept beneath the cauldron. The fire still burned there, black as night, its flames somehow draining light from the room rather than bestowing it. Pontu cast the stones into the fire. It swelled, licking at the bottom of the cauldron. The evil energy in the house swelled. Pontu clutched at his chest, feeling for a moment that he could not breathe. The feeling passed, and he backed away from the cauldron on hands and knees, shaking. There, that sensation would spread now. The vampire, frightening as it was, could not withstand such a ward. Or so Pontu thought. But then he had never seen what the Shades had put into the cauldron that they heated with their dark fire. His work done, Pontu left the underground chamber as fast as he could. Chapter 27. In a dejected frame of mind, Mag and I returned to our inn and went to our room. With Mag's help, I bandaged the cut on my arm. It was not so deep as I had feared, though it still stung when we put a healing poultice on it. Once we were finished, we changed out of our bloody clothes and into fresh ones. Mag threw herself on her back atop her bed while I sat in our one chair in the corner of the room. A vampire, I said. Now I understand the fear in the eyes of these people. And Yue's words make sense, said Mag. Do you remember? When we first arrived, she told us to inform her before we left. I imagine no one has been able to leave or reach Lan Shui since the vampire arrived. We only managed it because we came from the Great Rocks, into which the creature will not tread. And why would it, I said. It has plenty of food here. We must help these people, said Mag, though I have never fought a vampire before. I cocked my head as I regarded her. I am glad to hear you say so. I feared you might wish to pursue the weremage. Mag scoffed. The weremage is well beyond our reach, and we have little hope of finding out where until we can get our hands on that boy. But even if I knew she was just over the next horizon, I would not abandon these people to the slaughter. Do you think me heartless? I do not, and I am glad to be proven right, I said. Very well. Like you, I've never hunted a vampire before, but we may have to pursue it regardless, even without information. Time is not on our side. Yue has made it clear that she wants us gone. Have you heard tales of them? I snapped my fingers, for her words had given me an idea. I do not, yet there is one here who knows far more tales than I do. That old singer, Dryleaf. He said we should poke around the town and tell him what we found. I have a feeling this is what he meant. Mag's mouth twisted. I wish he had spoken plainly to us rather than leading us on with such games, but mayhap he had his reasons. Let us find him, then, and ask. Together we went down to the common room and found the barman. I feared he might not wish to tell us where Dryleaf's room was, but he offered no resistance whatsoever. It seemed it was not uncommon for the townsfolk to seek the old man's wisdom. Dryleaf had a room on the first floor towards the back of the inn and just next to the door leading to the privy. The smell was rather awful, but mayhap he did not mind, or mayhap he appreciated the ability to relieve himself at a moment's notice, often a requirement for older folk, as I can now tell you from long experience. He appeared soon after our 2 brief knocks on his door, and when he opened the door he stood there for a moment. He appeared soon after our 2 brief knocks. He appeared soon after our two brief knocks, and when he opened the door, he stood there for a moment, blinking over our shoulders, pulling his blue robes closer about himself. "Yes," he said at last. His voice was bright but weary, and I wondered if we had woken him. "Who is it, and how can I help you?" "Good day, Dryleaf," I said. "It is Alburn. We spoke yesterday. My friend and I are the visitors from the Great Rocks." "Ah, yes, of course," he said, wrinkles deepening in a wide smile. "How can I help you both?" "That is rather a long conversation," said Mag. "Mayhap we could take you to the common room and buy you a meal?" "I do not pay for my food here, but of course I will accompany you," said Dryleaf. "A moment." He turned back to his room, but I held the door open. "Can I help at all?" "Oh, Sky, no," he said. "I have it all arranged, you see, can find everything by touch. But bless your path for offering. No, go sit, and I will see you shortly. Or at least, we will speak shortly." He gave a little chuckle at his own joke. Mag and I went to the common room and sat. Neither of us was hungry, but we both ordered ale, and Mag even managed not to turn her nose up at it when the barman was looking. Soon Dryleaf emerged from the back of the inn. I called to him, and he used his stick to poke his way over to us. I helped him into a seat. "How has your morning been?" he said, once he had settled himself. "I will not say good, but certainly eventful," said Mag. "We found some in this town who were up to evil deeds." "Ah," said Dryleaf carefully, folding one hand over the other. "I may have heard something of them. And what did you do when you found them?" "We fought," I said. "They lost. They will do no more harm." Dryleaf's face went somewhat paler. Please tell me, friends. There was a boy." "Pontu," said Mag, cutting him off gently. "He is fine. Frightened, I'm sure, but unharmed." "Oh. Oh." Coffee. Dryleaf gave a deep sigh of relief. "Thank the sky. He is not a bad child at heart, but he has often landed himself in trouble. He is a poor judge when it comes to choosing companions." I leaned in closer. "We learned something else today, Dryleaf. When you and I spoke yesterday, why did you not speak of the vampire? Why has no one spoken about the vampire?" Dryleaf shrugged. "I told you as much yesterday. You two are strangers here, and these are uncertain times." Sorry, I just realized something. "Hey, what's up, Nicole?" "Greetings." "Oh no, what happened in the news, Nicole?" God damn it. Oh. I'm an idiot. Alright. Sorry, I just realized I had done a thing wrong on a website. Oh, yeah, I heard about the Jacksonville thing. Really sucks. Yay, America. I leaned in closer. We learned something else today, Dryleaf. When you and I spoke yesterday, why did you not speak of the vampire? Why has no one spoken about the vampire? Dryleaf shrugged. I told you as much yesterday. You two are strangers here, and these are uncertain times. I said nothing, for I thought you might be one of those ruffians, aiming to see how much I knew about your doings here in town. I did not think so, for you did not sound the sort, but I could not be sure. As for the rest of the townsfolk, can you blame them? You are strangers from beyond the walls. Seeing a town weak and afraid, some might try to take advantage of the situation. You would not be the first highway robbers to think they could leave Lan Shui with more gold than they brought. Well, that is not our aim, I said. We seek a weremage who attacked our home in Northwood. Mag cocked her head at me, and I frowned at her. Only after a moment did I notice what she had. I had called Northwood our home without thinking of it. A flush crept into my cheeks, and I turned back to Dryleaf. She attacked Northwood and killed many who are dear to us, Mag said, covering for my sudden, awkward silence. We followed her trail here. We have not found her, but we think those we fought today were her companions. That sucks, Wordwin. Said Dryleaf. That may be. We have not been here. They have not been here long. Indeed, many in Lan Shui did not notice their arrival at all. I always keep a sharp ear out for the town's doings, and I only heard vague rumors of them. I only heard vague rumors of their presence, most of those through Pontu, but the town has been very different since they arrived. Different, I said. Different how? Well, for one thing, the trouble with the vampire only began after they arrived, said Dryleaf, pursing his lips. I've tried to point this out to some in the town, including Yue, but they ascribed it to coincidence. I frowned, suddenly doubtful. I cannot say that I blame them. I've never fought a vampire, and I know little about them, but they cannot be controlled by any human, that much is certain. That is as may be, said Dryleaf, but still it makes me uneasy. I'm not overly interested in the vampire's arrival in Lan Shui, said Mag. I'm more interested in how we can kill it. Dryleaf was taken aback. Kill it? Yes, I said. We are pursuing the weremage, as we said, but we cannot with clear hearts leave Lan Shui in danger. We will help get rid of the vampire before we leave. The old man sighed, his shoulders drooping. I was surprised. I thought he would be happy to hear that we were going to help, but he seemed to have been overcome by some old sadness, something he had been unable to forget, but had suddenly been something he had been able to forget. Words are hard, but had suddenly been reminded of again. He overcame it quickly, though, seeming to marshal himself even as we watched. Well, I am grateful for your help, as I am sure many in the town are, or would be if they knew of your aim. As for the vampire, I will tell you what I know. It is struck near the village, but so far it has not come within the walls. They prefer to attack victims who are alone and unaided. Well, your words explain the abandoned farms we saw outside the town, I said. Just so, said Dryleaf. The vampire seems to be watching Lan Shui. It was after the second attack, 3 weeks ago now, that we became certain of what we were facing. When we did, Yue sent a messenger to the mystics in Bertram to request their help. but that messenger was discovered a few days later in the wilderness. Her body had been torn apart and drained of blood. We sent another, but he met the same fate. No one would go a third time, or rather, Yue would not send them. But that seems almost intelligent, said Mag. I thought that vampires were like animals. Dryleaf shook his head. In some ways, yes. But not entirely. They have no society or culture the way that satyrs do, and they never work together. They are solitary hunters. No one is sure where they come from, since they do not seem to breed, or at least there have been no sightings of vampire young. But in any case, they are possessed of incredible cunning, and they will study the actions of their prey with a single-minded obsession. The vampire could easily have seen the messenger and known they were going to get help. Mag frowned. That is ill news. I wonder how it keeps watch. It would be difficult to watch all the roads leading away from Lanshui to other larger towns and cities nearby. To us it does seem incredible, said Dryleaf, but vampires are possessed of astounding speed and agility, and they can see in the dark. Sunlight, on the other hand, is poisonous to them, and they hide from it, but the messengers stood no chance when the vampire stalked them in the night. Well, it will not find me such easy prey, said Mag. Then, glancing at me, she smiled. And I shall ensure it does not eat Alburn either. Now, how do we find it, and how do we kill it? The second question is more easily answered, said Dryleaf. Wood is poisonous to a vampire. Stab it with a steel blade, and it will only become enraged and kill you faster. But pierce it through with wood, and it will die as if it had drunk pure nightshade oil. A stab in the heart is best, for that will kill it instantly. You can also cut off the head or burn them, though that is much harder to accomplish. Easy enough, said Mag. The much harder prospect is how to find them, said Dryleaf. The best advice I can give is what I have already told you. They avoid civilization, and sunlight burns them. Therefore they are forced to lurk near lairs where they can ensure no sunlight will reach them. That usually means caves, and Lanshui lies at the very feet of the great rocks, though I think you are more likely to find this beast somewhere in the western spur that lies between us and Bertram. That was my thought, I put in. If this creature is found and stopped 2 messengers, we will not find it to the east. You will find a home northwest of Lanshui, on the lower slopes of the spur, said Dryleaf. It was attacked 6 days ago, and everyone who dwelled there was killed. The barman should be able to point it out to you upon a map. Then our path is clear, said Mag. We head west, search the spur, find the vampire, and kill it. She clapped her hands and stood. I only hope it is as easy as you make it sound, said Dryleaf, a cloud of doubt passing across his expression. We will set out at once, I said, rising to my feet. If we hurry, we should be able to get there in plenty of time to stalk it to its lair and set a trap. One more ale for the dusty road, said Mag, turning and making for the bar. Dryleaf chuckled as her footsteps retreated. She is a fighter, that one, he said. Indeed, sometimes I think she is too much of one, I sighed. You sound troubled, said Dryleaf, frowning. We were both fighters once. We served in a few mercenary companies, spending many years with the Ruby Crowns in particular, but we left that life behind a long time ago. Now I have been unable to rid myself of the feeling that I dragged Mag back into a world that she was much happier to have left behind. Yet you seem to be more reluctant, at least when it comes to this hunt, said Dryleaf. True, I said quietly. I suppose I have less to avenge. Vengeance is a shadowed road with a mournful end, whether you are victor or victim, intoned Dryleaf. I have not heard that wisdom. I cannot say I like it, but it has the ring of truth. I cannot say that I like it, but it has the ring of truth. Dryleaf gave a grim smile. Then he cocked his head. You say you served with the Ruby Crowns. I used to travel, as I told you, and I heard many tales of that company. Would I have heard of your exploits? Mine, I said. I doubt it. But Mag is another matter. Did anyone ever tell you of the uncut lady? The effect was immediate. Dryleaf straightened at once and gave a little gasp. The uncut lady? You cannot mean that she is your friend, just across the room, right this very minute. I do, I said, grinning. To think that I have been speaking with her and never realized, said Dryleaf. Her voice is far more beautiful than I had imagined it would be. Do not tell her that, I beg you. She thinks highly enough of herself as it is. Dryleaf giggled. If half the tales of her are true, she deserves to think so. I must shake her hand. I shook my head and laughed. Sky above, the last thing Mag's ego needs is an admirer like you. Dryleaf smiled in reply. The deep lines around his eyes crinkled when he did it, and his bushy beard jumped, but the smile faded almost as quickly as it had come. The 2 of you will take care of yourselves out there, yes? We will, I told him, as much as I can take care of her. Do not undervalue yourself too much, said Dryleaf. I am a fair judge of people, and that is just as easy to do when you cannot see them. I would say that the love and the companionship you give to Mag are worth more than 1,000 swords at her side. From what I know of her, in any case, she has never needed help when it comes to fighting. I studied him a long moment. I will try to remember it. Thank you. Mag returned with a mug of ale. It was half empty already. We should be off. I have told the barman to ready the horses for us. Dryleaf, you have our eternal thanks for your counsel. It is a pleasure to encounter such a wise and helpful mind this far from home. Dryleaf's mouth opened, and a thin squeak came out. Mag frowned. I seized her arm and hurried her away from the table. Sky above, let us get on the road before he musters the strength to speak. Chapter 28. The horses were being led out of the stable when we walked outside, and we rode out at once. The main road led north out of the town and continued that way for some leagues before turning west in the direction of Bertram. But we abandoned that direction quickly, turning upon a smaller side road that led to the farms and homesteads across the land that led up to the western spur. Just as Dryleaf had said, the barman had been able to tell us where to find what we were looking for. There were many homesteads and farms this way, but they became fewer and farther as one drew away from Lan Shui. At first we rode through farmlands just like the ones we had seen when we first came to the town, and just as then, many of the farms looked abandoned. But soon the land was all wild, open countryside, with no one around. Trees began to grow thicker about us, until soon we were riding through a small wood through which we could occasionally still glimpse the rising spur of land ahead. Finally, the ground began to climb, and the trees thinned again. We crested a slope, and, as if it had sprung out of the ground to meet us, we came upon the homestead we had been searching for. Excuse me. At the center of it was a house, and a little farther off a barn stood at the bottom of a steep slope. Some crops had been grown on the land surrounding the house, but weeds had begun to spring up among them unchecked. Mayhap 30 paces from the house were the blackened remains of a funeral pile. We burned them, of course, the barman had told us. It was the only proper thing to do. But their child was... Well, they had two, and we found the elder with his parents. The younger son, well, we never found his body. We paused at the sight, surveying the cleared land for a moment. Mag studied the pyre with a dour look on her face, and I wondered if she was thinking of Sten. After a time, she nudged her horse again. Come, she said. The day is young, and there is hunting yet to do. She led me to the house, and we took a brief look inside. If the cold pyre had cast a shadow over our mood, the house plunged our souls into darkness. Though the people of Lan Shui had removed and burned the bodies, they had done nothing further to clean the place. Pieces of smashed furniture lay strewn about, and blood stained the floors and even some of the walls. They had a back door, I said, pointing to it. I wonder why they did not try to escape. They must have attacked too quickly, said Mag. We left the place. It was clear that there was nothing inside to help us in our hunt, and I had no desire to remain there a moment longer than I had to. In the clearing outside, we spent a moment gathering ourselves. Mag's expression had soured still further, and I worried that she might do something rash. Not that I knew what that might be. We had no idea where the vampire had gone, nor indeed where to start looking. Let us explore the wilderness, I told her. If I had to guess, I would say it came from the west. That is where the land rises again, and where there are most likely to be caves. As you say. She swung into her saddle at once, and I followed her a moment after. We guided our horses towards the wilderness out in back of the house, but as we drew within 10 paces of the trees, I heard a sharp rustling in the underbrush. Hist! I whispered. We leaped down from our saddles again. Quick as blinking, I had my bow up and an arrow nocked, and Mag held her spear ready to strike. We approached the woods one step at a time. Behind us, the horses nickered nervously. Remember, they said it was fast, whispered Mag. It is not the vampire, I said. The sun is up. Mag frowned. What then? I said nothing, for I had no answer. And then, from the shadows between the trees, a creature leaped forwards. I almost loosed my arrow, but stopped myself just in time. My mind had seen a wolf, but in the space of a heartbeat I saw that it was only a dog. Granted, it was a large beast, a wolfhound of a kind common in Dorsey. Its skin was mottled brown with black spots. Its fur. Its fur. Sam Reeves followed. Thank you so much, Sam. Good to see you here on the old Twitch. Its fur was mottled brown with black spots. The hound growled at us, hackles rising. Mayhap it belonged to the family, said Mag. That was my thought, I said. I could not help a small measure of disapproval as I looked at the beast. It must have run off into the woods when the vampire came. I knew it was only a beast, but in my homeland we train hounds to be loyal to their masters. And then I caught another movement in the woods. Wait. Hey, Sam! A small, pallid figure peeked out from behind a trunk. As soon as it saw me looking, it vanished again. My eyes widened. The child, I breathed. I loosened my draw and stowed my arrow. Mag put up her spear at once and knelt, extending a hand. The hound calmed down at once, its growl ceasing. Too much at once. Ah, more caffeine sounds amazing. Kristen! Kristen's here, yay! I loosened my draw and stowed my arrow. Mag quickly put up her spear and knelt, extending a hand. The hound calmed down at once, its growls ceasing, but it did not relax its stance, nor move from its position between us and the boy. "Hello," called out Mag. "We're here to help. We came from Lan Shui." The boy poked his head out from behind the tree again. My heart ached to see the stark terror in his wide eyes. His hair was disheveled and matted with days' worth of dirt and grime from the woods, and his clothes, though sturdy-looking, were almost black with filth. "Hello," Mag said again. "Will you come out? We will not hurt you, I swear it." Slowly, achingly slowly, the boy took a step out from behind the tree. The hound, at least, that dog, though. The hound at last relaxed its stance, straightening and turning to trot by the boy's side. He seemed to draw strength from its presence, for he walked forwards a bit more confidently, though he still kept a good distance away from us. "You are from town?" he said. His words cracked, the sound of a voice that had not been used for days. "I do not know you." "We are travelers," said Mag. "When we passed through Lan Shui, they told us what had happened here." His pale face whitened further. The dog whined. "But we do not have to speak of it," said Mag quickly. "We only want to help you. Can we take you back to town?" "I do not know you," the boy repeated. "As she said, we are not from Lan Shui," I told him. "But Mag speaks the truth. We mean you no harm." The boy said nothing, but only tightened his grip on the hound's fur. Mag went from kneeling to sitting and drew back her hand. "What is your name?" she said. The boy's nose twitched. "I am Liu," he said softly. "Liu," said Mag. "Some others came before us. Did you not see them?" "When?" said Liu. Mag looked up at me, and I answered, "Mayhap 3 days ago?" "I was in the woods," said Liu. "Oku and I hid there. We hid as far away as we could. I was afraid to come back until yesterday." "His name is Oku?" said Mag, pointing to the hound. Its tail wagged once and then stopped. The hound tossed its head, as if it had realized what it had done and was slightly embarrassed. "Yes," said Liu. He went with me when I ran." Tears welled up in his eyes and his lip trembled. I felt my chest grow tight. "That was very smart and brave of you," said Mag, her voice thick. "Mama told me to," whispered Liu. "And you were very wise to listen to her," said Mag. "She died," said Liu, his tears beginning to leak down his cheeks. "And Papa and Kinsha, did they not?" Kinsha must have been his older brother. I looked at Mag helplessly, but she never took her eyes off Liu. "Oku went with you," she said. "He seems like a very good dog." Liu did not notice that she had avoided his question. Oku's tail wagged again, twice this time, and he padded slowly towards Mag. He sniffed tentatively at her feet before submitting to a gentle pat between the ears. "He likes you," said Liu. "I'm glad," said Mag. Liu took his first step forward since emerging from the forest. Another long pause, another small step. "Are those your horses?" he said at last. "Yes," said Mag, "but the brown one is an idiot. He is so stupid my friend named him Foolhoof." Liu giggled. It sounded as if the sound had been pulled from him against his will. Yay for the next batch of projects! Liu giggled. It sounded as if the noise had been pulled from him against his will. "What about the gray one?" "Her name is Mist. She is much smarter, and she loves children. Would you like to meet her?" Liu gave a tentative nod, and Mag rose at last to her feet. I feared Oku would be startled by her movement, but the hound accepted it easily enough. It trotted behind her as she went to Liu and reached out. The boy took her hand and let her lead him to the horses, who had begun to drift off. I noticed that Oku seemed to be limping a bit as he walked by Mag's side. "Here, boy," I said, walking over to him. Oku paused and looked up at me, his wide eyes glistening. I knelt by his side and extended a hand slowly towards his left rear leg. Oku tensed, but I kept my movements slow, and he let me take the leg. Part of the fur was matted, and probing it gently with my fingers, I felt a light cut. "He has been hurt," I said, looking up at Liu. "The monster did that," said the boy. "Oku tried to fight it, but it hurt him." I have some things in my saddlebag for that, I said, rising and going to Foolhoof. The gelding looked at me suspiciously, but he stood still as I opened a saddlebag. From it I drew some dried yarrow, crushing it in my fist and mixing it with some water from my skin. I returned to Oku and spread it on the cut. The wolfhound submitted to my ministrations, though he whined about it. Do not hurt him, said Liu, frowning. It stings a bit, but it will help the wound heal, I said. Liu, said Mag, did you see anything after you ran into the woods? We want to make sure no one else gets hurt. The boy went silent for a long moment. Yes, same. Yay! And avoided our gazes, but finally he nodded. I saw the monster afterwards. It came from that direction, and it left the same way. He pointed towards the trees in a northwesterly direction. I went that way, leaving Foolhoof behind me. Sure enough, right where Liu had pointed, there were tracks on the ground. They were not human, that I knew. Each step had torn deep gouges in the dirt, and I thought of the clawed limbs that vampires were said to have. It also seemed to run on all fours. I have it, I told Mag. It will be an easy trail to follow. Thank the sky, she said. Let us get back to town quickly. We should be able to return with plenty of time to follow it before night comes. Mag hoisted Liu up into the saddle before her. The boy seemed delighted to be riding atop a horse. I would have wagered that he had never been on one before. Oku trotted at our side, and despite the wound in his leg, he kept pace with our horses trotting easily enough. A lot of trotting. Oku ran by our side, and despite the wound in his leg, he kept pace with our horses trotting easily enough. We rode away from the homestead, careful to keep Liu on the northern side of the clearing, where he would not see the pyre upon which his parents' and brothers' corpses had been burned. Time. Chapter 29. Alburn drew his horse to a halt. Sun walked another few paces before she realized the old man had stopped, and she hastily returned to him. What? Said Sun. What is wrong? Nothing at all, said Alburn. We have arrived. Sun, who had become lost in the story again, blinked hard and looked around. They stood in a clearing in the woods, a good distance southwest of the town. She had a vague memory of Alburn leading her off the main road and down the side path that took them here, but she had hardly noticed at the time. Above them was a rise in the land, and not far away was a cave with a deep black mouth. It seemed somehow to loom over them in the night. Moon's light let her see only a few paces within the entrance. Would you help me start a fire? Said Alburn amiably after dismounting. I can manage it, but it is somewhat harder. Of course, said Sun. Do you have flint? Naturally, said Alburn, pulling it from a pouch at his belt. As Sun collected dry leaves and twigs for kindling, Alburn went to the trees and pulled down a few small branches to get the fire going. But when he had returned with those, he went to a small hollow nearby and retrieved some larger logs that looked to have been cut with an axe. Those were here already, said Sun. You have been here before. I have, said Alburn, just today. I told you I planned to come here tonight. What is what accent, Christian? I don't know what you're talking about. With Sun's help, he laid the logs in a crouching pattern. When it was done, Sun took a knife from her boot and stuck flint to it, sending sparks across the leaves. They cut easily, and in no time a merry fire burned before them. How did the boy survive? Said Sun as Alburn worked. It was only a few days. A few days without food is long enough to be perilous for one so young, she said. A few days without water will kill anyone. There was a stream in the woods that his family would drink from, and he went there on occasion, said Alburn. I think it is likely he collected some roots and berries, too, for his parents would have told him if any were safe to eat. But more than that, do not underestimate the will to live. Even in a child, it can be strong enough to pull us through times of great peril. You would not enjoy a few days without food or water, but I imagine you would survive them. Sun found a nearby branch to use as a poker, and then she settled herself on the ground next to Alburn, staring into the flames. It was a little while before the old man looked at her, his eyes alight with interest. You seem to be deep in thought, he said. If it is no imposition, may I ask what you are thinking about? Sun looked at him like one just waking up. Oh, it is no great matter. Only I do not quite understand what a vampire is. I have heard the name, but never a proper tale of them. Ah, said Albert, a fair question indeed. Vampires were rare in those days, and they are more so now, but there is not much to tell beyond what I have already said. They subsist on blood. Though they will gnaw on corpse flesh, they seem to do so only to drain as much blood as possible. No hair grows upon their bodies, their ears are pointed like an elf's, though of course they are in all other ways entirely different from those terrible beings, and they walk sometimes hunched on 2 legs, sometimes on all 4. They can leap several paces from a standstill, and their claws are sharp enough to sink into wood and most stone, meaning that walls are no proof against them. Son shuddered. How horrible. Albert nodded. Yes, they are quite terrifying, especially if one does not know how to defeat them, which I did not, before Dryleaf told me. A good thing that he was there, said Son. You were most fortunate. Was I? Said Albert, and his eyes crinkled as he smiled. I have already told you my views on fortune and luck. But if I may, as an aside, would you hold my bow? The question was so unexpected that Son stared at him for a moment, blinking. Of course, she said at last. But why? Because we were in the woods at night, of course, said Albert. I doubt anything like a wolf will approach our fire, but just in case it should, well, let us say that I am not quite the shot I used to be. He lifted the stump of his right arm, and Son could not help but laugh. Albern's smile deepened, and he reached for his bow, which he had placed on the ground at his feet. Son took it with reverent hands. She had heard enough tales of Albern to know how much he had accomplished with this bow, what deadly foes he had faced armed with nothing else. Seized by a sudden impulse, she drew the string. It pulled far more easily than she had thought it would, and yet she could feel the power contained within the wood. She felt that she could shoot farther and with greater power than any bow she had ever held in her life. It is a masterpiece, she breathed. You made this yourself, did you not? I did, said Albert, and if I may be forgiven a moment of pride, I am glad you knew that. Whenever you are spoken of in tales, your skill with the bow is always listed first among your traits, said Son. Albert laughed at that, shaking his head. If only those tales were true. I am a tale spinner myself, and so I know something of how the truth of my stories must have been twisted through the years, becoming a count of accomplishments that I would scarcely recognize. Yet I have heard it said, on good authority, said Son, that tales are not meant to be believed. Then you have been well advised. Son smiled, but it quickly died upon her lips. I must ask you another question, if I may be so bold. You have well earned at least one more honest answer. What under the sky are we doing here? Son gestured at the empty clearing around them, at the stars above and the black looming mouth of the cave not far off. Albert nodded, pursing his lips. A fair enough question. Let me answer only that I am expecting someone. Do not trouble yourself over much. I expect them before long. After they have arrived and then left again, we can be on our way. You can go back to, well, whatever you were doing before you found me. Does that answer satisfy you? Will you give me a better one? Said Son, her brows rising. Not at present, said Albert with a grin. Then I suppose it will have to do, said Son. I thought it might, said Albert. And now, would you like me to continue the tale? Please, said Son, settling herself upon the ground. Take out a couple of those seds. And then I'm off for a break. All right, shirt break, Indian. You will be back. You will be back, and you will continue to be back. Tommy Wiseau. I don't know that I know Tommy Wiseau like well enough. Albert nodded, pursing his lips. A fair enough question. Let me answer only that I am expecting someone. No, I can't do a good Tommy Wiseau. I haven't ever actually like watched The Room all the way through. I've seen a lot of like the iconic scenes, but like, yeah. Anyway, off for a break. Back in a mo. Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind. Hang it on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Fucked it up a couple of times, but we almost got it down. Got a call from my Wi-Fi while I was playing. And then she hung up on me. Lesai. Hi, sweetheart. You're on speaker and I'm on stream.
You're on speaker, what?
You're on speaker and I'm on stream.
Oh, well, I was calling you to let you know I'm about a half an hour away from home and we're gonna leave.
Okay, I'm gonna do one more 45-minute sprint.
Okay.
Loving you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Alright, you heard the lady. Oh, hi, Meg. Oh, hi. We rode into town with Liu and Oku. Guards must have spotted us approaching, for we found a small reception when we arrived. Several of the folk of Lan Shui were there, as well as Constable Baolan. "What are you doing back here?" said Yue as we pulled to a stop before her. Her glare did not look promising. "We found this boy near his homestead," said Bang. "We heard that it was attacked only a few days ago." Yue looked at Liu again, and color rose in her cheeks. Sky above. The Ton boy. "Just so," I told her. "Is there anyone here who can care for him?" "Give him to me," said Yue, rushing forwards. She extended her hands for Liu, but the boy recoiled, pressing back into Mag's body. "Go with her, Liu," said Mag, urging the boy forwards with a gentle push. Though he still seemed reluctant, Liu let himself be pulled down from the saddle and into Yue's arms. She handed him off to a man from the town, who took off his coat to bundle Liu up in it. "Now then," said Yue, "what are you doing back here?" Mag and I both balked at that. "We returned a boy you thought was dead," I told her. "That should earn us at least some leniency." "I do not deny our gratitude," said Yue, "but I thought you left this morning for good, and I was not sad to see you go. We are staying for a little while at least, to help with the—" I shot a glance at Liu and cut my own words off. "With the creature that has been seen in the lands around here." Yue scowled, and she, too, looked at Liu. "That is not a matter for you to concern yourself with. We are taking care of it." Are you? I said, my blood rising. Is that why we found this boy alone, abandoned in the woods? Despite your obvious desire to see us only as troublemakers, we are not here to harm you or anyone in this town. Yue turned back to the boy and then back to us. Her hands were twitching as though she sought someone she could feel justified in seizing and throttling. Why did you go looking for the creature? She said. What is it to you? A danger to the people of your town, I said, and we think we can end that danger. As you said before, we are rather well-armed travelers. You turn my words on me like a jest, she said. Forgive me for thinking this hardly matters to you. Because I do not always look like I am chewing on a lemon rind does not mean I am not serious. Her scowl deepened and she strode towards my horse. I jumped down from the saddle and planted my feet as she stalked up to me, looking down into my eyes. I did not realize until just that moment that she was almost a full head taller than I was. Mag tensed in her saddle, but she did not yet climb down to help. You think you can insult me in front of the people of my town? Growled Yue, too quiet for anyone but me to hear. Her breath washed over my face, and I was surprised to find it unexpectedly sweet. This is the first time I have done so, I said in an equally low voice, yet your words to us have been a never-ending stream of disrespect. I appreciate your position, Constable. For once, try to see ours. She looked over my shoulder at Mag. I felt some of the tension bleed from her, though she did not back away. What position is that? I waited until she met my gaze again. We want to help. We have other business that will carry us far away from Lanshui, but we will not abandon your people while this monster threatens them. What do you have to lose? The worst that may happen is that the beast kills us. The best that may happen is the reverse. She seemed to want to argue further, but the eyes of the townspeople were upon her, and they were pitiful. At last she stamped her foot in frustration. Fine, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. If you wish to go riding off after this beast, I suppose I cannot stop you, but do not expect me to go trooping off after you. We will not, I said. Now, if you'll excuse us, we mean to do more hunting before the sun wanes. Yue's face went from dark to pale in an instant. The sun is lowering. Night will be here soon. We mean to lure it out of its cave just after sundown, said Mag. Better, we think, than following it into its lair, even during the day. The constable shook her head. I cannot say that is a wise course of action, but it seems clear you will do whatever you want. Take Oku! Liu's thin shout came from nowhere, and I looked up at him in surprise. The boy still clung to the man holding him, but he looked at us in earnest appeal. Take Oku, he said again. He is a good hunter. Thank you, Liu, said Mag gently, but we can look after ourselves. Oku is a good fighter. You will need him. The boy's eyes welled up, and before we could answer, he burst into tears. He kept me safe, he gasped between sobs. He will keep you safe, too. My eyes stung, and I blinked hard before looking to Mag. She met my gaze and sighed. Oku sat near the villagers, his ears cocked as if he knew what we were saying. Oku, I said. Tis. The hound's mouth parted in a smile, his tongue lolling to the side, and he trotted up beside Mag's horse. She gave a sigh and wheeled around, riding away from the wall. I remounted, looking down at Yue again. Mayhap for the last time, I suddenly realized. We will return when we have killed the beast, or not at all, I said. I wish you and your people good fortune. I turned and rode after Mag, hoping I cut a suitably impressive figure as we twatted towards the lowering sun. Chapter 30. Now that we knew where we were going, we pressed the horses harder, and we had returned to the homestead in what felt like no time at all. But looking up, I could no longer see the sun over the western spur ahead. Daylight would remain in the sky for a while yet, but we were running out of time. Oku kept up with us easily, apparently untroubled by the slight wound in his flank. As soon as we stopped in the clearing with the farmhouse, he trotted around the perimeter, sniffing at the ground. I led Mag to the woods where I had seen the tracks earlier. We can follow them easily, but I am not sure whether we should bring the horses or not. They will make the journey faster, but I do not want them to panic if the vampire should attack us. Let us bring them, and if we sense we are nearing the end of the trail, we can leave them behind or tether them to a tree, said Mag. I want to find the creature's lair in time, or we may not catch it as it tries to slip out to hunt. You read that in Tommy's voice? Yes, well, there you go. That seemed a sensible point, and so I did as she suggested. We nudged the horses into the woods, and I kept my eyes fixed on the ground, only lifting my gaze every so often to take stock of the land around us. It was unsurprising that the vampire followed no trail I could see. Its path plunged straight through the trees and underbrush, paying no heed to any obstacle in the way. It was also unerringly straight. Wherever the vampire had been heading, it knew the direction well. The light was dim in the sky when we came to the end of the trail. It led into the mouth of a large cave, which came looming at us from the side of the slope ahead. We stopped half a span away. Oku began to whine immediately. I glanced down at him. I think we have found what we are looking for, I said. So it seems, agreed Mag, but we do not have much time. Daylight was vanishing quickly. Let us tether the horses a little farther away and make ready. We did so in short order, leaving them back down the trail we had followed to get here, their reins tied to the springy branches of a willow tree. Oku stuck close beside us now, and he began to whine the moment we approached the cave again. If we take care not to get injured, it should not be too difficult of a fight, I said. You have your spear, and I have my arrows. If we pierce it through, the wood should do the rest of the work for us. Simple, said Mag. We took positions near two trees that stood close to each other. I pulled some dried meat from a pouch on my belt and ate it, suddenly realizing I had not had a meal since the morning. I hoped I would not regret that in the coming fight. As the light faded further and the blue edge of night bled into the sky, the moon showed themselves in the east. I think I should lure it forward, said Mag. It will see me with my spear, and, I think, approach me first. You can lurk in the trees, and when you have a clear shot, you can take it. Hopefully that will end it quickly. A good plan, I said, as long as you do not let it spring upon you. It will be your fault if it does, said Mag with a wry look. Do not wait too long to shoot. I snorted. As you say. And take the dog with you, she said. It might distract the beast if it remains by my side. Careful, I said, glancing at Oku, who was watching Mag with his tongue lolling. He is a clever hound. You would not want to insult him. Would I not? Said Mag indifferently. I chuckled despite myself. Tiss, Oku. The dog leaped up and trotted to my side. Mag looked at me and frowned. You said that earlier. What is it? Tiss, I said. A common command for trained hounds. How do I tell it to go away? I suspect I shall want to. Now you're just being cruel, I said, reaching down to scratch Oku behind the ears. His tail wagged with delight. Do not listen to her, friend. She is nowhere near as fierce as she sounds. Mag snorted and rose at last to her feet. The sunlight was nearly gone. I took Oku off into the trees, finding a place to stand that gave me a clear view of the cave mouth, but did not put Mag in my line of fire. To the left of the cave mouth was a sort of natural wall in the side of the slope. The top of it was almost flat, and it climbed like a jagged stair up the side of the mountain and winding away out of sight into the woods. I guessed it would carry one. I guessed it would carry one closer to the peak of the spur, though I would have been hesitant to try the ascent with any speed, but I took position near it, one arrow held loose in my hand near the string. Night advanced and the stars twinkled above us. Still, we saw nothing, heard nothing. When would the vampire rise? Did they ever have nights where they did not rise at all, but slept through to the next day like a soldier just returned home from campaign? I wished I knew more about them, or that someone else in Launchtree had been able to explain more, but then if they had, they would likely have dealt with the creature themselves. And then Oku growled. I grew alert at once. The hound bristled, his nose pointed straight towards the cave, his paws spread. But his growl would not carry to Mag's ears. I hissed, and she glanced over. I pointed to Oku and then at the cave, hoping she could see the gesture in the moonlight. She nodded and hefted her spear and shield, planting her feet wide. A few moments later we heard a scraping sound, and then the vampire emerged into the night. It walked on two legs like a man, but it was grotesquely hunched, bent almost double so that its hands nearly scraped the ground. If it had straightened, I know it would have stood at least 3 heads taller than me. Its skin was mottled, pocked, and pallid. It reminded me of the skin of those who have been badly burned and then healed, covered with a mass of scar tissue. Its hands and feet ended in curved claws, each as long as a hand. And it clicked and clacked them against each other as it moved. Its eyes were black, black as a wizard's who had eaten mage stones, and its pointed ears, which jutted backwards, flitted and twitched, straining to hear any sound. But once I saw its mouth, I forgot every other detail. It was round and wide, almost a circle, and the teeth were bared in a constant grimace. Those teeth were long and pointed and sharp, and stained so badly that in the moonlight they looked to be covered with fresh blood. All this I took in with a moment's glance, and I felt my limbs seize with fear. My right hand, holding the arrow, was slack, and my bow arm lowered towards the ground. Oku gave a tiny whimper and slunk back behind my legs. But Mag, of course, felt no fear at all, or if she did, she hid it perfectly. Without hesitation, she took one step towards the creature, taking no care to soften her footfalls. The vampire, which had seemed to be snuffling at the ground, snapped its head up towards her. Its sharp teeth pointed, and it let out a long, hateful hiss. "Sky above, you are ugly," said Mag. "Come, let me wipe that hideous grimace from your face." If the creature understood her, it gave no sign, but it did begin to slink towards her. I wondered for a moment why it moved with such caution. It knew something of humans, clearly, and had already killed many of them. Why would it not think that Mag could be hunted as easily as anyone else? Mayhap it was uncertain because Mag was so brazen in her defiance, because she did not show the slightest hesitation or dread. And then I recalled that I was not just a spectator and that I'd remained inactive for too long. The vampire was a few scant paces away from Mag now, and soon I would lose my shot. The arrow was already nocked. I lifted my bow, drew, and fired straight towards the creature's heart. It moved. When people of other kingdoms see the archers of Calenton, they are astounded at our skill. Most who met me thought my bowcraft was something of legend, that I must surely be the greatest bowman who ever lived in the Nine Kingdoms. Indeed, I am a skilled archer even by Calenton standards, or I was in those days when I had both arms. And yet, for all my ability, I've met many masters who far surpassed me at the height of my skill. I was trained by a woman who could fire arrows faster than heartbeats, faster than blinking, and send them all with enough strength to pierce chainmail. If an enemy shot at her, she could shoot their darts from the air with her own. I know because I saw her do it. Her eyes were unerring and sharper than an eagle's, and her limbs were a blur. And yet the vampire moved faster than her. It saw the arrow from the corner of its eye, turned, darted aside, and snatched the arrow from midair before I realized what was happening. Then it flipped the dart around and threw it back at me, not with the strength of a bow, but still fast enough to pierce skin. I was saved more by luck than reflexes. I tried to duck, almost too late, and slipped on a patch of loose leaves. I struck the ground hard, the wind driven out of my lungs. This guy saved me, I thought. How is it so fast? I heard an inhuman screech and looked up just in time to see it charge me. All four limbs ripped and tore at the earth to propel it forward, sending clods of dirt in all directions. But as fast as it was, Mag was able to catch it. She ran and leaped in between me and the vampire, and it skidded to a halt before her. But hardly had it paused before it struck with one clawed limb. Mag blocked the swipe, and I heard the deep rending of claws on wood. She stabbed in retaliation, but the vampire spun out of the way. It tried to turn the movement into another attack, but Mag's shield was there again to stop it. It was not until that moment that I realized something about Mag. I'd only ever seen her fight another human. When she did so, it was a slaughter. I'd never seen her face another opponent who had stood a chance. But now, facing a foe that was so much stronger than a human could ever hope to be, Mag's skill was displayed in full. My eyes, sharp as they were, could not follow the speed of her swings and thrusts. My mind could not comprehend how she knew where the vampire would strike next, nor how she could twist in just such a way to avoid it, place her shield in just the right way to block its swiping claws. Once or twice the vampire struck her mail instead of the shield, and I winced, but after the first time I realized that even that was part of Mag's plan. She only let it strike her when the blow would glance from her armor, and when it gave her the opportunity to attack with her spear. Her armor was part of her, just like her shield and spear, and she fought now with her whole body instead of only her weapons. Unfortunately for me, the vampire still outmatched her in strength. That meant she had to be more nimble than it was, and after a few heartbeats of frantic battle, that meant she had to leap out of the way of a swipe, landing on the vampire's other side. It turned on me in an instant and pounced. I shrieked, and not a noble battle cry either, and barely managed to leap to my left as its slashing claws sailed past. But now it had me backed up against the steep slope with nowhere to run. From the corner of my eye I saw the natural wall that climbed up like a stair. Nowhere to go but up. I jumped across the stone surface just as the vampire lunged, and it slammed bodily into the slope. Oku came flying from nowhere, snarling and yapping, and the vampire recoiled from the hound. Then Mag attacked, and the vampire screamed hatred at her as it retreated. But it too had nowhere to run other than the top of the wall. It hopped up, still facing back down towards Mag. Suddenly my perch was far more dangerous than the ground had been. I edged towards the lip of the stone, readying myself to jump down, but the vampire spotted the movement out of the corner of its eye. It must have thought I was attacking, for it swiped at me again, forcing me a step back. 3 more steps up we fought that way, and now I was too high up the slope to jump down to the ground without risking a broken leg. Oku stood in front of Mag, trying to help but only in fact blocking her spear, and the vampire turned back and forth as it tried to pin one of us down, unable for the moment to do so. My bow was useless with the vampire so close, and I drew my sword, but that proved to be even more futile. I swung, and for an instant I thought my strike would be true, for the vampire did not try to duck it. But that was only because it caught the sword in its hand instead. I felt the steel bite into flesh. But I did not. I felt the steel bite into flesh, but I did not lop the hand in half the way I would have a human's. It only hissed at me through its pointed teeth, dragged the sword from my grasp, and tossed it over the ledge. Blast! I cried, my hand outstretched futilely towards the sword as it fell to the ground some 10 paces below. And then I saw something. The vampire swiped at Oku, who leaped back only to become tangled in Mag's legs. She cursed as she spun, flipping over the dog, her green cloak flying about her. But the moment's distraction had given the vampire an opening. It stalked towards me, black eyes glinting in the moon's light. A fair hunt, I said, but I do not wish to grant you an easy meal. I leaped over the ledge. Albern! Screamed Mag. The vampire roared and leaped after me. A fall from this height would likely kill me, but the vampire would survive, and it would have a meal waiting for it at the bottom. But then I grabbed the thick, out-thrust branch of the pine tree that I had spied from the ledge. The vampire's roar grew much louder, and then faded as it fell scrabbling past me. I swung up and landed kneeling on the branch, slinging my bow off my shoulder and drawing an arrow in the same motion. I lined up the shot at the vampire, which was still falling through the air, and loosed. The vampire landed. I heard nothing break, but the impact obviously winded it. Still, it looked up at the sound of the flying arrow catching it in midair. It hissed up at me as it snapped the arrow between its dirty claws. Then Mag's spear struck it in the neck, flying straight through it and into the ground. The vampire's eyes went wide with shock, even as a black corruption spread from the spear's wooden shaft through its skin. It looked like rotting meat, but it spread as quickly as flame. Around us, the woods settled to silence except for Oku's throaty growling. I looked across the gap between the tree and the slope, and Mag looked back at me, panting. Sky above, she said. That was a fight. It was, I said. What do you think of your helpless pet now? Much the same, she said. After all, I still had to kill the thing. My lips formed a thin line. Only because I distracted it? Mag chuckled. That does seem to be what you are best at. Oh, do not look so offended, Albern. After all, we have a true pet now. She pointed at Oku. I sighed. Just get back to the ground. It will take me a little longer to climb down. It did take me longer to reach the clearing than it took Mag, but not by much. When I joined her, she had already extracted her spear from the vampire's corpse and was cleaning it. We should take the head, I said, just to put Yue's mind at ease about the truth of our words. A good idea, said Mag, and mayhap now she will not look upon us with such disdain. Mayhap, I said. Where did my sword land? Mag pointed. Then, as I went to fetch the blade, she took the vampire's head off with one sweep of her spear. We found the horses, who shifted nervously at the stench of the vampire's corpse, and rode back through the woods towards the road that would take us to Lanshui. As we emerged from the woods into the clearing with the farmhouse, I took one last look at the darkness beneath the trees. Something within me was still uneasy. The forest held no answers, only menace, and now a vampire's corpse. So why did I think I would not rest this night? It is irritating when you do that, said Sun, when you ask a question like that, and then the story turns in another direction. You already know the answer. Why are you asking me? You could tell me if you wanted to. You choose not to. Hush, said Albern. Let me have my fun. Chapter 31. Pontu paced in one of the upper bedrooms of the shade hideout. He strained to hear any sound of fighting, of struggle in the town outside. That was a ridiculous urge, and he knew it. Even if the vampire did strike tonight, it would do so in the fields, the farms, a long ways away from Lanshui itself. He would never hear it, if it did strike tonight, but mayhap it would not. Tonight was the tonight. I think I fixed this one already. Yeah. Tonight was the tonight. Already fixed that one. Tonight was the test. Come morning, he would know whether or not his mad scheme had worked, whether he had finally driven the vampire away from Lanshui for good. He had been trying to sleep, hoping to wake to a bright and happy morning, but he could barely lie down, much less close his eyes. A floorboard creaked on the first floor. Pontu froze. As he stopped pacing, the floorboards beneath his feet gave another, louder creak. Had he imagined the sound? But no, now he heard something else, something coming up the stairs. Someone or something. He heard claws scrabbling on the wooden steps. Claws. No, not possible. Not here. He burst out the door of the bedroom onto the second-story landing. At the top of the stairs crouched a figure, but it was not the vampire that Pontu so feared. It was a cat, dark of fur like one would find in the mountains. Pontu knew the sight of it well. Every child of the foothills knew of mountain lions. Even as disbelief struggled to work its way through his mind, even as he tried to reason out how the beast got this far into town, the lion pounced. It was a cat dark of fur with a white tail like one would find in the mountains. Pontu knew the sight of it well. Every child on the foothills knew of mountain lions. Even as disbelief struggled to work its way through his mind, even as he tried to reason out how the beast got this far into town, the lion pounced. It gave 2 great swipes of its claws. Pontu felt them slice into his flesh like daggers. He gasped, his chest laid open, and felt the alien, terrifying sensation of cool air on his insides. He fell on his back, the mountain lion perched on his chest. Its amber eyes, pupils wide as coins, stared into his own. And then the lion said, "You are the one who was supposed to die." Pontu blinked through the pain, through the darkness creeping in at the edge of his vision. This had to be a dream, a nightmare. He would wake. This had to be a dream. I just read that. But then he realized the truth. The lion's eyes were glowing. It was already partway through a transformation. It had already formed a human mouth with which to speak. As he watched, the transformation finished, and Kaita knelt over him, one hand on his throat. "Delik should be alive," she said. "All the others should be. Why are you the only one who survived? You are the weak one, the worthless one." Despite the terror, despite the knowledge of his own death, Pontu gasped out a laugh. Blood came with it. "Not so worthless. I have saved Lan Shui." Kaita hissed and narrowed her eyes. "You have saved nothing." "I completed the ritual," said Pontu, wheezing. 5 magestones. It is finished now. The magic will drive the vampire away forever." He'd expected Kaita to grow enraged, to storm at him, mayhap even to finish him off quickly. Instead, she only stared at him in amazement, and then she began to laugh. The laugh grew louder, ringing on, even as Pontu felt himself slipping into darkness. Mag and I rode back to Lan Shui. Though it was the middle of the night, we found many people awake and there to greet us. Yue stood among them, watching from the wall atop the south gate. Sinshi, one of the other constables, was there with her. The gate was closed, but as we rode up, Yue ordered it open before descending the stairs to meet us on the street. "What happened?" she demanded, before we could even pull our horses to a stop. "We fought the vampire," said Mag simply. "We won." She cut the leather thong with which she had tied its head to her saddle and threw it into the street. The crowd recoiled and gasped. Yue's hard features were pale. How did you—" Most of the faces in the crowd had turned worshipfully to us, and I quailed under their gazes. "I played but a small part. I merely distracted it so that Mag could strike the killing blow." "He almost killed it twice," said Mag. "Indeed, he might have had more clear shots if I had not gotten in his way." I could see that Yue was growing frustrated with our modesty, and in the moment I agreed with her, at least when it came to Mag. I knew without a doubt that Mag could have defeated the creature alone, and that the same could not be said for me. The small crowd now pushed in close around us, wanting to know more about the battle. Oku was nearly crushed against my legs by the press of people. He slipped through their legs and stepped away from the crowd, looking somewhat miffed. And as Mag, suddenly uncomfortable, tried to answer their questions, I looked over the heads of the crowd. There, near the back of the group, I saw the boy Pontu. He wore plain, grubby clothing, his face smeared with dirt. It looked as though he had been working all day. I hoped that meant he had at last found a more honest line of work. Beside him stood Dryleaf, one hand holding his walking stick and the other hand on the boy's shoulder. Excuse me. The old man beamed a pleasant smile, his eyeline a bit to my right. But Pontu's expression seemed strange. Eager, but not as joyous as most of the other townsfolk. I pushed past the crowd, which seemed preoccupied with Mag, and went to speak with the two of them. As he heard my footsteps approach, Dryleaf turned towards me. "Is that Alburn?" he said. "I imagine it could not be Mag, for it seems she has quite a following." "It is," I said. "Greetings, Dryleaf, and to you, Pontu." Pontu gave a start, as though he was surprised to have been noticed, and ducked his head. Dryleaf chuckled and patted the boy's shoulder. "Do not mind him. He is only a bit shy. We heard what you did. This town will never be able to properly express its gratitude." As I tried to tell them, Mag did most of the work and all the hardest part of it, I told him. "I suspect you are underestimating yourself again, though I am sure the uncut lady fought admirably," said Dryleaf. "But no matter. I am here for quite another reason. Pontu came to me. He said he had something urgent to tell you, and so I brought him here so that we could both wait for you to return from your hunt." I looked at Pontu in surprise. He ducked his head again. "Is that right? What is it, boy?" His bulging eyes glinted up at me, though he hardly raised his head. "I think you should both hear it at once." He hardly stuttered as he had last time, and he did not whine. "A moment, then," I told him, and turned back towards the crowd surrounding Mag. Pushing my way through them, I put a hand on Mag's arm and spoke quietly. "If you are done playing the grand hero, I think we should return to the inn. I could use a meal and a bath, and that boy Pontu wishes to speak with us." "Sky above, yes," muttered Mag. We excused ourselves from the crowd. They did not wish to see us go, but Mag got rather insistent, and then at last Yue commanded them all to be off to their homes before she started making arrests. I gave her a final grateful nod before we left, but she stepped close for a final word. I will not deny my gratitude for your actions, nor your right to a warm meal and rest, she said, but I would speak with you again before you leave lunch. Why, Constable, I said, feigning surprise, we would be honored. I thought you could not wait to be rid of us. Her familiar scowl returned. We shall see if I end up changing my mind on that count. I laughed, and she stalked off. Mag and I went to Dryleaf and Pontu, who now stood alone on the torchlit street. Well, I said, here we are. What do you have to say for yourself, boy? And why have you said nothing before now? Said Mag sternly. Pontu avoided our eyes again at that, ashamed. I am sorry for what happened before. I was too ashamed to come speak with you right away. Too much ashamed. Pontu avoided our eyes again at that. I am sorry for what happened before. I was too ashamed to come speak with you right away, but I realized you needed to know something about the weremage. I tensed, stepping closer to him. The one working with the shades? He nodded. Yes, that one. I know little about her, but I do know where she is going. She told all of us. She said her next destination was the town of Oparu in Kalentin. They, the shades, they are up to something there. She never said what it was, but it sounded important. The boy's words struck me like a hammer blow between the eyes. Mag, too, suddenly wore a grim expression, though hers was mostly out of concern for me. My heart must have shone on my face, for Pontu looked at me curiously. A strange car has just pulled into my driveway. Hey, what's up, Alex? What is wrong? Nothing, I said. Thank you very much for telling us this, Pontu. You did the right thing. He nodded and turned, heading off into the town. It was as if he had forgotten Dryleaf was there, but the old man did not seem to notice, much less mind, for he only kept beaming at the two of us. Do you see what I mean? He said. A good boy, if sometimes misguided. He swallowed hard and put out a searching hand to shake. Now then, I understand I have the honor of addressing the uncut lady. Is that correct? Mag suddenly looked just as confused as she had seemed grim a moment ago. Without thinking, she took Dryleaf's wrist and shook, frowning down at him. I have been called that, yes, but please, call me Mag. It would be my highest honor, said Dryleaf. Sky above, to think I should have lived to see you in person. Or to meet you, I should say. He gave a hearty laugh, and Mag gave a weak one as she tried to join him. You are even better than in the stories. You are very much too kind, I told him. Truly, I mean that. But come, let us walk you back to the inn. It is late, and surely you are tired. Dryleaf frowned at me, not out of anger, but with a sudden strong interest. It is late, but I am hardly weary. You are trying to cut our conversation short. Why? I opened my mouth, trying to summon a lie, but above us an owl hooted, and I looked up at it. The bird perched on the edge of a nearby building, staring at me unblinking. Not an owl. Not an owl. A raven. An raven. Later, Sam. Thanks so much for coming by. Great to see you. But above us a raven called, and I looked up at it. The bird perched on the edge of a nearby building, staring at me unblinking. My nerves tingled, a sensation that crept up and down my limbs, leaving me anxious and wishing to move. Whatever lie I had been dreaming up fled my mind. Pontu's words trouble me, I told him truthfully. If the shades are truly in Kalentin, and if they are plotting something there, well, I wish to find out what they are doing, and why, and then I wish to stop them as quickly as I can. We should search their hideout, said Mag. We hardly had any time to investigate it the last time we were there, and I do not think Yoe will begrudge us a little look about the place now. A raven hooted. Out! 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 I would be surprised to find anything there, I told her, but for lack of any better idea, yes, let us go. In any case, I wish to ride for Opara in the morning. Agreed, she said. Together we turned and set off down the street, but we had not gone 2 steps before Dryleaf, who I had entirely forgotten, piped up behind us. Wait, he said. Wait for me. I clapped a hand to my forehead. Sky save me. I'm sorry. Of course I will walk you back to the inn. The inn? Said Dryleaf, stepping briskly up beside me. Do not be silly. I will come with you. I would not wish to delay you for an instant, and it would be my great pleasure to accompany the uncut lady on one of her adventures, even such a small and uneventful part of the tale as this. I looked over my shoulder at Mag. She shrugged. What harm could it do? I will try not to take that as an insult, said Dryleaf, his bushy eyebrows shooting skywards. Very well, I told him. It will be our pleasure to have your company. Of course it will, he said, beaming. As we set off together, Oku fell into step next to the old man, his tongue lolling to the side. Oh, we're all about the sound effects here. 32. Dawn was still a ways off and the streets were mostly empty. We saw only a few people about, early risers pulling carts or hefting sacks in preparation for the day's toil. Sacks. But despite the hour, they seemed almost cheery compared to when we had first arrived in the town. One of them even gave a happy smile and a nod to Mag, which she returned after a moment's hesitation. When we reached the building where we had fought the Shades, we saw that the front door had not been replaced, but still lay on the floor just inside the entryway. I helped guide Dryleaf through the opening. The Shades' corpses were gone, but the bloodstains remained. For an uncomfortable moment, I was reminded of the shattered homestead to the north where we had found Liu. Dryleaf paused inside the doorway, cocking his head back and forth as though listening. This place has an evil feeling to it. It does, I agreed. In fact, the feeling had grown worse. It was stronger, more penetrating, like a thrumming in the air, a monstrous heartbeat that seized my own pulse and forced it to match time. Let us have a look about, then, said Mag. You can go with her, said Dryleaf. He released my arm and leaned on his staff. I have my stick, and you can return to me if you have questions. We will be quick, I said. Come, Mag. From room to room we went, circling all around the first floor. All we found were some discarded scraps of food and rubbish. No messages or any other signs of what the Shades had been up to. We went to the stairs and climbed to the second floor, but it was just as barren as the first, though, thankfully, it was free of the bloodstains that spattered the first floor. Indeed, the floors of the bedrooms upstairs. Yep, already fixed that. Looked fresh scrubbed. There were no possessions to be found. Even the clothing had been taken. Mag and I poked at the mattresses in case something had been concealed within, but there seemed to be only feathers. Yue has been here already, said Mag, frustrated. If there was any clue, she has taken it. Well, we can ask her tomorrow, I said. She said she wanted another word with us before we left town. If she has found anything, I doubt she will tell us, grumbled Mag. I think we have earned at least a little trust from her, I said. Come, Dryleaf will likely be wondering what has happened to us. Oh, I'm only reading for proofreading. This is just a proofread. Constable Ashta settled into her chair at the constable station. She would get no sleep that night, she knew, but the next day, for the first time in a long while, she thought she would be able to rest well and truly. She leaned her chair back against the wall, tilting her head back to rest against the wooden planks, and kicked her boots off. They fell to the floor, dripping a bit of mud. Twisting her feet, she reveled in the cool air washing across them and released a deep sigh. And then a thought occurred to her. A thought, not a though. Right? Not a though. Yep, already fixed that one. And then a thought occurred to her. A small, nagging thought, and yet it gave her no peace. The curse of a constable who held her duty as a sacred trust. Did she forget to order the gate closed? With a heavy sigh, she tilted the chair up again and reached for her boots. She was a citizen of Lanshui. She had been born and raised here, but she still felt entirely fed up with the townsfolk sometimes. They would not wipe their own rear ends if the constables did not remind them. Pulling on her boots, hating the warm, sweaty feel of them, she stood and strode out into the night again, turning her steps towards the north end of town. The streets were empty, thankfully, and so she was able to make quick progress, and the north gate was not far from the constable station. She would ensure the gate was closed, and then she would return to the station and enjoy her night's duty. Mayhap she could even sneak a nap. The sergeant would be in a lenient mood tonight. Finally, she rounded the last corner and came into sight of the north gate. Sure enough, it stood wide open. Ashta shook her head and looked skyward. She could not recall who was on gate duty that night. Was it Shen? That seemed likely. The woman had a mind like a sieve, and more than once Ashta had caught her sleeping in the guardhouse or neglecting her duties in favor of a game of moons. Well, Ashta would give her a scare. Hopefully Shen would remember it, at least for a time, and not shirk her duties in the future. She strode straight up to the guardhouse door and threw it open hard. The heavy iron knob slammed into the wooden wall behind the door, sending a loud crack reverberating through the night air. The constable stopped dead in her tracks, her mouth open, a shout ready but already dying on her lips. The guardhouse was empty. Mag and I came downstairs to find Dryleaf had left the front room and gone to the sitting room on the building's western side. The chairs had a thin film of dust. Oku sat by the old man's side, huddling against his legs. It was clear the hound was put off by the evil energy that suffused the building. "And," said Dryleaf, "was your hunt fruitful?" "Sadly, no," I said. "I fear we have only wasted our time, and yours." Dryleaf shook his head slowly, clucking his tongue. "Do not trouble yourself over me," he said, shuffling towards the back of the room and feeling out the floor with his staff. "I am only sorry I could not be of more—" He stopped. Slowly he turned and walked back the way he had come. He stopped again. "Dryleaf," I said tentatively, "what is—" "Quiet," he said, so sudden and brusque that I found myself complying at once. It was like the order of a battlefield commander, and I realized rather suddenly that I knew almost nothing about the old man's past. Mag, too, had fallen completely silent. Back and forth Dryleaf walked, and now it was as if he was sniffing, but I could smell nothing other than whatever terrible, nameless stench seemed to permeate the very air in this place. At last he stopped near the center of the room. Then he turned and strode right towards us. "Move," he said, again speaking in a voice that brooked no disobedience. Mag and I stepped aside, watching the old man. As he passed us, Mag looked at me, raising her eyebrows. I shrugged. Dryleaf stopped at a tapestry hanging on a wall. He reached out and felt it with his hands before pulling it aside. He probed the wall behind it with his fingers. Then suddenly his fingers sank into the wall, or rather, a piece of the wall moved, taking his fingers with it. There came a sharp click, and a section of wall behind the tapestry swung open to reveal a dank staircase. It's dank, man. It's pretty dank. The old man turned to us, folding his arms over each other and around his staff. I eyed him for a long moment. "When I was a child," I said slowly, "I heard stories of blind people whose other senses grew sharper than was natural. Their other senses became so good, in fact, that they almost replaced the missing sight. Some of them could perform incredible feats like seeing through walls or catching arrows in midair, but I never believed such stories." Dryleaf snorted loudly. "You were wise not to," he said, grinning. "Such tales are ridiculous, at least so far as I have experienced. I cannot hear a mouse fart from a span away or some such nonsense, but without my eyes to distract me, I do pay a bit more attention to my ears. That is why, when I was walking about, I heard this." He walked to the middle of the room. There he took his staff and struck at the floor at his feet. Then he struck the floor again a pace away. Thum! Thunk! Mag stared at him astonished. "They sound different." "Indeed they do," said Dryleaf, "because there is a hollow spot here, and a deep one, a chamber under the house." "Well," I said, "I suppose that makes more sense than my first thought." Dryleaf grinned. "Sometimes what appears to be magic is simply a matter of paying attention." Constable Yue stalked through the streets entirely irritated. Ashta had come and fetched her as soon as she had found the north gatehouse unoccupied. She would have gone to find Shen on her own, but she did not know where the woman lived, and so it fell to Yue, as so many things did. Yue hardly thought it was worth it. Shen was probably in her home getting drunk, celebrating the vampire's death. That was what Yue had been in the middle of doing before Ashta had come pounding at her door. Two lefts and then a right? Yue frowned, stopping in the street and looking around. It had been this way, she was almost certain of it, but in the middle of the night and with 2 cups of wine in her belly, it was suddenly less clear. "Caw!" "Caw!" Yue looked up. A raven perched on the edge of a building above her, looking down. It seemed to be studying her. For a moment, Yue had the nonsensical thought that it was waiting for her to do something. "Shoo!" she growled at it. "I've little patience for anything tonight, least of all you." The raven did not understand her, of course, and so Yue surely imagined the vague expression of amusement in the way it tilted its head at her. She had had just enough wine that she did not wonder what a raven was doing out at night. "Ah, there," she said, recognizing Shen's home and happy for a reason to leave the owl behind her. Shen lived in a small 2-room house wedged between a smith on one side and a tavern on the other, a tavern where she and Yue had shared many drinks in the past. Sky as her witness, Yue was going to make Shen buy her plenty of drinks to make up for this cursed nighttime adventure. The front door stood slightly open. Curse the woman. She must be well and truly drunk. Yue threw it open unceremoniously. Shen, she cried, where in the darkness below have you gotten off to? But the front room was empty. Yue gave an exasperated grunt and stalked towards the bedroom in the back. She threw it open, but the bedroom, too, was empty. That gave her pause, and she looked back into the front room, frowning. Where under the sky had Shen gone? And then she heard a scraping against one of the walls. Of course, the alley between Shen's home and the tavern. There was a privy there. Shen was having herself a piss. Shen! Roared Yue, stalking towards the alley. She would likely wake up some of the neighbors, but she did not care. Let them take their frustration out on Shen once morning came. She rounded the corner. There was the privy. And there was Shen, on the ground, slumped against the wall, her face deathly white, her tunic covered with blood, but not as much as Yue would have expected, judging from the gaping wound in her neck. Yue froze. No, she thought. No, that is not right. The vampire did not come within the walls. Yet there was Shen. The vampire was dead. Yet there was Shen. Even as she watched, Shen's fingers scrabbled futilely against the cobblestones. She shuddered one last time and died. Yue turned and sprinted for the constable's station. Dryleaf took my arm, and together we followed Mag down the stairs into a wide chamber beneath the house. With every step down, the evil feeling in the air increased. Caw! 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 Oku whined, trotting just behind me, his steps hesitant. I thought about sending him back to wait outside the house, but I wanted him close to protect Dryleaf in case of danger. Below, I felt the air open up into a large space, but everything was pitch black with no faintest light reaching us from the stairway. Is there a torch? I said. My voice vanished into the empty space. I heard the sound of Mag fumbling along the wall. Here's one, she said at last. Give me a moment to light it. Sparks glinted in the shadows as she worked. Finally, a flame sprang to life, and Mag lifted the torch high. The chamber was large, larger than the first floor of the house, which meant it extended under the buildings on either side. There were desks and tables around the sides of the room, some of them littered with papers, but in the center of the room was a massive cauldron filled with a liquid I thought was entirely black. It was only when we took a few steps forwards and the light of Mag's torch fell upon the cauldron that I saw a glint of red. Sky above, I breathed. Mag walked up to the cauldron and took a closer look. Oku went with her, growling in his throat at the cauldron. Mag sniffed. When she turned back to me, her expression was grim. Blood, she said. Old blood. It smells almost rotten. I knew instinctively that this must be the source of the evil feeling in the house. But how could that be? It was a great deal of blood, true, but it was not as though we could smell it through the floor. Let me get another torch, I said. I removed Dryleaf's hand from my arm and went to the wall, fetching another torch and lighting it with Mag's. What is it? Said Dryleaf. Tell me. My apologies, I said. There is a cauldron here, filled with blood. It is paces across. Sky, whispered Dryleaf. How much? How many? He did not finish, but I heard the words as plainly as if he had spoken them. How many people died to fill this cauldron? I went to Mag's side and knelt, thrusting my torch close to the ground. A pit had been dug beneath the great iron bowl. The stones within were blackened and twisted. I could see no fuel. Whatever had burned there had burned away, but it had melted a great deal of the surrounding stone. Dark fire, I whispered. These stones have been melted by dark fire. Dark fire, said Mag. What is that? An evil magic, said Dryleaf. You have heard of mage stones? Mag frowned. I know that they are a dangerous substance. Forbidden by the king's law, said Dryleaf, nodding. When a wizard eats them, they gain immeasurable power according to their branch. Fire mages gain the power of dark fire. It is a black flame that consumes light instead of giving it, and it will melt almost anything. But there's another way to create dark fire, I said. Setting fire to mage stones will do it. I have never heard that, said Dryleaf. Neither had I said. I learned it only recently. It had been in the Great Rocks with Lorne. So these shades you were hunting, said Dryleaf. They use dark fire to heat the cauldron, to boil the blood. But for what purpose, I said. The vampire, said Dryleaf. It must have been. The feeling in this place, the smell. Mayhap that is what summoned the vampire. I was right all along, though I wish I had not been. The shades did bring the creature, but why? What did they hope to gain? Some sort of weapon, said Mag. I looked up in surprise. She was across the room.
We're supposed to be there at 5:30.
I'm finishing this chapter, and then we can go.
How long?
A couple minutes.
Okay, because it's already 5:20, and it takes 16 minutes to get there.
Okay. Want to say hi to stream? Alex already said hi.
Hi, Alex.
She was across the room, standing by one of the desks that lined the edge of the room. Lined the walls. And she had a stack of papers in her hand through which she was riffling. These mention the vampire. The cauldron appears to be part of some ritual to summon it, to unleash it on the Shade's enemies. Using a mage stone fire infuses the blood with the stone's essence. It increases the strength of it, gives it some sort of magical property. I am not certain. There are many things written here I do not understand. But that is what brought the vampire out of the mountains, if indeed that is where it came from. That was a thought so dark I was stunned to silence for a moment, and Dryleaf seemed to feel the same way. Only Mag still moved or made a noise, flipping through more and more of the papers. I do not understand, I said in a hushed voice. A vampire cannot be controlled. But even if you could set it loose in a town and unleash it, it is still just a creature. If we had not arrived to kill it, the people of Lanshui would have done so in time. They would have gotten word to the mystics eventually. And if the Shades mean to use this as a weapon of war, it is an even worse idea. In a large city, one worth conquering, there would be many guards and constables and even mystics to hunt it. That is what happens whenever a vampire is desperate to attack a city. Desperate enough. Yeah, already fixed that one. To attack a city by its own choice. That is why they prey on the weak and the isolated. There's more, said Mag, scanning a page. Something about empowering the vampires, strengthening them. I cannot entirely understand, but it seems they had some scheme for making the beasts even more fearsome. The beast, you mean, I said. Only one. Mag stopped short. I suppose you're right, she said, though they speak of more than one in these pages. I felt a sensation like ice sliding down my throat and into my gut. Mag, I said, my voice coming as a whisper, how far would this ritual reach? How close would a vampire have to be for the magic to draw it in? Sky above, said Dryleaf, but Mag only stared at me. My words were still working their way through her mind. Mag, I said again. It says many leagues, she told me. I felt the blood drain from my face. Lanshui stands at the feet of the Great Rocks. There's nowhere in Dorsey, and few places in all of Underrealm where vampires can be found in greater numbers. But vampires never work together, said Mag. You both said so. That is what the stories say, muttered Dryleaf. But you should know better than to believe every story you hear, child. And then, in the town above us, the screaming began. Dun, dun, dun! Okay, that's it. And I can't do a whole big outro because we have to go. We're having dinner with friends and blah, 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 blah. Dramatic ending. Achieved. And I'm going to toss a raid to somebody. Who's on right now? Who? All right, we're tossing a raid to Kerrigan. Go say hi. Tell her she's beautiful and wonderful and a really good video game player. And, I don't know. Just say hi to Kerrigan for me. She plays Heroes of the Storm, and she's much better at it than I am. So, yeah. Tell her hi. Catch you next time. Bye.